This is wild. Bungie has just disabled the Encore mission that's located inside the new UI, the portal underneath Pinnacle Ops. The reason why is because people were farming it too efficiently. It had like a time estimation of like an hour to complete it, but players could clear it in like 10 minutes and you'd get like 4 or 5 drops after every single clear. So people figured out very quickly, and we made a video of it on this channel, which is why you're subscribed, I'm sure. And so that way you could level up super fast. And people were leveling up so fast. My friends right now that are in my raid team are like, they've been playing nonstop and they're at like 320 power. The power cap right now is at 400. So they almost achieved that maximum power in just a few days. That's how efficient it was. So Bungie has decided to take that mission offline completely. Now, obviously, this is going to have mixed reviews, though, because there are some players out there, and you out there watching this right now might agree, maybe you didn't get to take advantage of it. So now your power level isn't up there with the rest of the players. So it kind of punishes the more casual players while trying to punish also the more hardcore players. So there's been a little bit of mixed reviews, but let's go ahead and jump into the exact details here. We have identified an issue where the Encore mission is substantially easier to complete. Like I said, they estimated it would take over an hour for each clear, and it obviously doesn't. And dropping higher quantities of rewards than intended with Pinnacle Ops. All right. As such, we have disabled the Encore mission within Pinnacle Ops and the grappler modifier, which people were using to, fly through it much faster. Throw on an eager-edged sword, got that grappler modifier, life is good. And this is all within the portal, of course. These will be re-enabled at a future date. We will provide additional details when available. Now, if you've been grinding this, you're wondering what to do now. The Kel's Fall mission is the second best one. So, the Destiny players, we just go down the hierarchy of what is the most efficient, what is the cheesiest thing to farm if we're trying to achieve our end goal. Because right now, it's kind of a mindless power grind, right? We're grinding Encore. This thing's been in the game for years now. We don't need to spend so much time grinding old activities, but Bungie has put a carrot at the end of the stick saying that, if you want to level up to that 400 power, you're going to have to do this mission like 1,000 times. And they assumed it would take us longer, but we're obviously much more efficient on average than I guess they expected, especially with that grappler modifier. That makes things really fast. So Encore missions were getting cleared way too fast. Bungie's carrot on the end of the stick wasn't good enough, and they want to slow down your grind. They want to slow down your process of getting to level 400. And it is really important to get to 400, by the way. You might be wondering, like, why should I care? All I have to be is 100 to do the raid and contest. But when you do the raid and you're only power level 100, you're only going to get tier 1 drops from the raid. So keep that in mind. If you're level 200, you're going to get tier 2 drops, 300, 400, so on and so forth, right? So when you get up to 400, you're going to have a much better chance at getting much better loot because they're going to have multiple perks and potential for tier 5 drops. So now the way Destiny 2 works with the Edge of Fate and presumably moving forward with each expansion, you want to get up to max power as soon as possible. So that way when you do get a weapon drop or an armor drop, it's a tier 5 weapon or armor piece, making it usable in perpetuity, right? And once it's at the max tier. But if you wait a long time, like say, for example, a new expansion drops and you don't level up through the Encore mission or farming Pinnacle Ops, etc., well, all the drops that you get during that period of time are going to be tier 1 drops and tier 2 drops. And so they're not going to be quite as good as the spicy tier 4, tier 5 drops. So they've created a very interesting carrot on the end of the stick here. We have an interesting comment here. This one comes from Mr. Raffle Waffles, and he goes, totally understand that this is a tricky situation, and he details some of his opinions here. We'll go through this because I think he brought up some interesting talking points. The first is leaving Encore untouched and having all raid racers grind to 450 power in 4 days would mean that the power grind would be over before it started. While that's true, it's also unnecessary to be 450 power for the contest raid. It's going to be very helpful for the normal raid, of course, but for the contest raid, it's not going to be essential at all. This hurts the player's enjoyment long-term and hurts retention long-term. I don't know if this necessarily hurts the player's enjoyment long-term. It may hurt retention long-term, though, because everyone will sort of devour the power levels much faster, but it's nice to have the ability to just grind if you want to grind and actually get to that level versus being forcibly time gated again and again and again, like we've seen Bungie do many times. So I actually really enjoyed the idea that Bungie was like, hey, what if we raise the power cap really high and we make it kind of a grind to get there, but we are not going to be cringe and put a bunch of time gates on everything. I thought that was a decent idea, and obviously it got exploited a little bit with the Encore mission, but that aside, I did think that was a better approach. If you are going to make us grind power, at least take off the caps. I like that part of it. Which is bad for the health of the game. Obviously, losing retention is going to be bad overall. And then we have, and also, even if you did grind the raid up to 450 power and you go into normal mode, there is a power delta. So basically, even if you're like 300 power above the activity, you don't get to be 300 more powerful than the activity. Like there's a delta that caps you. So usually it's like a 50 power delta within end game activities like that. So once you're over 50 power of the selected activity, then you don't get any more powerful. You don't just suddenly one-shot all the bosses with a primary. Moving on to the next part, we have B, removing Encore now, 2 days into the expansion, means that some people have already grinded to significant power, 300 plus. That's where my friends are. I'm at like the mid 200s. My friends are over 300 though. While others were planning to start today, creating some unbalance in those who were raid racing. Now again, this does create a little bit of balance, but this should not affect your raid race and the ability to raid race, because you only need to be 100 power to do the contest mode. What it would affect in general is the loot that you get from the raid, right? So you get more beneficial loot if you are 300 plus now, because you're going to get that higher tiered loot from the raid. Exactly, like literally from the raid, not just from the activities, not just from Pinnacle Ops, but literally from the raid. Your raid loot will be higher tier. Bungie is damned if they do, damned if they don't in this scenario, TBH. I agree, but if they were going to disable it, disabling it as early as possible would have been a smarter decision, in my opinion. So that way people didn't exponentially benefit from this getting to over 300. That would have been really smart if they could get on top of it. Obviously, I made a video talking about it very early on. And, you know, I know that for a fact that a good majority of the Bungie devs are subscribed to my channel and they pay attention to everything that I post. And as you know, I've been doing this for so long, you know, so they had an opportunity to shut it down early on, but I think they kind of let it go, and they let it go pretty far. And I think maybe they're regretting it. I personally feel like leaving Encore as it was for the next 2 days would have probably been the move, so that everyone was on the same page going into the raid. But I totally appreciate that by leaving it there, the implications for retention over the next 3 months until next power increase might be really negative in their own right. While I do think that that might be true in terms of long-term player retention, players are still just going to grind the game mindlessly for 12 plus hours a day until they finally hit that power cap. You're just slowing them down, basically. Like, instead of getting it done in 4 or 5 days, they're going to get it done in 9 or 10 days, right? It's like the end result is the same. It's just, how much do we want to slow people down from hitting the power cap? And do we really want to make people play more like old missions that take even longer? Like, there is a level of insanity here, right? Where we make the Destiny players do, you know, 5,000 old missions on repeat. Like, there's a level where it's like, it's too much, you know? In fact, a lot of people would argue that having to do the Encore mission as many times as they did just to get to 300 was a bit much. Like, it's a bit repetitive. And there definitely should be a better system, right? We're meant to enter this new saga, have all these new quality of life changes. I was kind of hoping that the power grind would have some diversification within it, and it would be, you know, challenging and unique and change from each encounter. But instead, it just turned into Encore Mission Farm Simulator, which was a bit disappointing. Then he goes on to say, still, the main issue, I think, is with the portal. It's infinitely grindable by design. Bungie has encouraged people to play the way they want to play, and they know full well that the raid racers are going to play whatever way gets them the biggest advantage the quickest, e.g. grinding Encore. And yet, when that inevitability has played out in front of us, we're getting this change to nerf what they were doing. Play the way you want to play, except when it's too fast. LOL. Yeah, exactly. That's a problem. Again, he brings up the raid race thing. I really don't think this is an issue for the raid race in any capacity, other than the fact that by getting higher tiered armor, you would have better overall stats. So you could go in with like closer to, you know, 200 weapons, 200 super, and 200 melee or grenade or whatever stats you're looking for, right? If you get that higher tiered stat, you would have a significant build advantage, but you would only earn that by playing like 14 hours a day every day, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. You got 4 days to grind like mindlessly for 14 hours to get what is probably a pretty marginal advantage, if I'm being honest. Like, you're getting a stat boost more than anything. Like, you're getting a faster super, you know, weapons do a little more damage. I mean, it will matter in the long run. It's not like you're not going to want that. It's not like you're not going to grind it. but it shouldn't be so. I don't think it's going to matter as much as people would think. I think that solving the mechanics is going to be more importantly than anything. I almost feel like no matter what the activity of choice was for the grinders from day one, e.g., if Encore wasn't in the rotator and there was a different mission and people settled on that instead, we'd be seeing a nerf to that right now, too, simply because it had happened to be the thing that everyone was doing to be most optimal, which, like I said before, now everyone has rotated from the hierarchy of, most efficient power farming and pinnacle ops from Encore down to Kel's Fall. And if Kel's Fall is too efficient, according to Bungie's made up standards, then they'll just go down the hierarchy as far as they need to go so that they can grind up to 400 power as fast as possible. Because we're doing old missions here. Let's be real, right? If we're going to grind an old mission or years old missions, we might as well just do the one that's most efficient, right? We're not trying to be in here 100 times in the slowest mission possible. That's something that the Destiny 2 players never do, right? We're not trying to do the longest, most painful mission 1,000 times. There will always be a most optimal activity, though. This is a good point. There will always be a strat that people settle on. And so there will always be people going faster than others. And there's got to be a point where Bungie is comfortable with that because their portal is infinitely grindable. It's the fundamental design of the system, which I do think is good. That's the design of the system. And this is a good point to make, that you're meant to be infinitely grinding. I think Bungie didn't have the foresight to see this happening, which is funny to me that they designed this whole system and it's meant to be like more advanced, but it has just such a big fundamental flaw to it. What you would need to do is have a system where you can't just play the same mission like 100 times in a row. You'd want to have it be on like a rotating system where if you played the same mission multiple times, maybe your loot is diminished. Like instead of getting +5 pinnacle drops, you suddenly get +4, +3, +2, +1, which would not diminish your grind, but it would make you have to rotate to the next activity. So maybe you have to do like 3 or 4 of the Encore mission, and then your tiered loot has gotten so much lower, so now you need to move on to Kel's Fall, and then you need to rotate on and go on back and forth. Getting people to forcibly move through the whole playlist and play all of the activities, because that is the most efficient way. And then in that regard, you'd get people playing all these missions that Destiny 2 has accumulated over the years, even though they're old, which is a little bit annoying, but they now have refreshed and new modifiers that make them more interesting. And it's also the meta and the most efficient way to min-max your power level. So that would be a much better system. Instead, you just have people playing whatever is the most efficient activity 1,000 times. I don't know if this uncomfy decision now is ultimately the better of the two evils and will be healthier for the game long term. I don't think any of us can truly know that. We simply don't have the data in front of us that Bungie has. But what I can say with certainty is the following. This was obviously going to be controversial no matter what. But I think the way Bungie announced this, removed the playlist out of thin air, then brief explainer tweet after the fact, could have been way better. I commend the devs for trying to be communicative this year, and I think largely the comms have been really solid. But in this specific instance, it feels a little terse and doesn't really invite much goodwill from the player base to hear out why Bungie is making the decision this way. I'd agree. There's a world where they explain why leaving it the way it is a problem for the long-term health of the game, which the player should be amendable to, and the player should be in favor of things which help the game's long-term health. So this gets them onto Bungie's side. They give people advance warning, e.g. in the TWID earlier today, hey guys, this is really going to hurt the future of Destiny. We're going to give you one more day to do this, but then we're turning it off at X date/time. That would actually be an excellent way of doing things. So that way, maybe the more casual people that didn't get to farm this could like get a chance to at least get a few hours farming it, so you could get yourself up to, maybe 150, 200 power, wherever you're at, right? And then maybe even make it a win for people by giving out, I don't know, like an emblem or something to appease people a little bit further. I mean, yes, you could give another emblem out, but we're kind of getting to a level of insanity where every time Bungie introduces another bug into the game, we give out a new emblem to sort of laugh about it with players. I don't hate the idea. It's obviously been done several times before, so no reason to not do it again. But yeah, I think giving people a little bit of notice is fine. The emblem, sure, fine. And bam, the sentiment around the change would have been at least not be quite as bitter as it is right now. I agree. Sadly, the sentiment towards Bungie is often so negative that I think even in the scenario where they did the above, people would still be crucifying them for it just as much. And that's why it's so important to push back. against the endlessly negative people in the community, because otherwise, if Bungie has no upside to do things better, because they will get hate regardless, why do they even bother? But I mean, they bother because they have to bother because this is literally their game that they're developing. That's like they're making a lot of money off of it. So like, even if they get a ton of feedback or a ton of hate and criticism, they still have to bother because literally they make money off of the game. Like, you always have to talk to your audience, and you always have to work with them. And if you just so happen that have such terrible lines of communication that everything you post just is met with a wave of hate, that speaks volumes of you as a company more so than the community. And you could try to roast the community all you want, but you're never going to censor people. You're never going to stop people from the rage or the feelings that they have towards the game or towards Bungie. So instead, what you need to do is mitigate it by being better, by communicating better. So I actually don't agree with this part, but Bungie always needs to communicate, and they need to be as transparent as possible. Regardless, from my one perspective, that change in approach would have been a super welcome one. Anyways, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. So there it is. That was pretty much all of the situation summarized in there. Let me know what you think about Encore mission being removed. Is Bungie making us do this mindless grind, making it too hardcore? I mean, previously in expansions, we only had to grind for like 10 power increase. But now all of a sudden, with this reset, we're back down to 10 power, and we got to go all the way up to 400 in a grind that was designed to take around 90 hours of playtime, specifically in this Pinnacle Ops playlist. Now, with the Encore mission and people farming, it was able to be done so in about 50 hours. So people were able to reduce that 90-hour grind to 400 power to about 50 hours, so 50% reduction roughly. And now Bungie's like, no, not so fast. We're going to make it so you actually do have to invest 90 hours to go from power level 10 to power level 400. And this brings up an even more important issue, which is that apparently in 6 months, when Renegades comes out, our power levels would be reset back down to 200, meaning that this is going to be a common theme and a common thing for Bungie and for Destiny 2 players. You're going to be grinding this power at the start of every 6-month cycle infinitely now, unless we actually voice our contempt for this, right? Unless we say, hey, this is not it, Bungie. We do not want to do 1,000 missions of Encore every 6 months, or whatever mission it is, Kellis Fall, you name it. We don't want to be doing old missions this much just to make our power level increase so we can get tier 5 weapons. We're going to have to find another way to inflate that play session time. But let me know what you think about this down in the comment section below. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed. Smash the like button, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Later.